Next on our agenda is our attendance data. And I'll ask Ms. Patterson, our Director of State Delegate, and our Title IX coordinator.
Good evening. Tonight I will be speaking with you about our student attendance data. Objective 2.1 of the district strategic plan reads, the number of students missing fewer than 10 days will increase each year. When we initially created the strategic plan, this objective replicated the state's CCRPI criteria. Although the CCRPI guidelines have since changed, the parents and community engagement members felt that keeping the 10-day measure was the most appropriate. The actions related to this objective include to continue system-wide protocols for monitoring student attendance and for notification of parents, and to refine the parent information plan addressing the importance of student attendance. With regards to system-wide protocols, the expectations for student attendance are included in the Student Parent Handbook and Code of Conduct. In addition, the schools use consistent communications for students missing 3 consecutive days and set increments for unexcused absences. In addition, each school has an attendance support team. The next several slides compare 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and 2019-2020 student attendance data. We will begin with the district data and then look at each school's data. The brown bar represents the percent of students missing 5 or fewer days. The blue bar represents the percent of students missing 6 to 15 days. And the green bar represents students missing over 15 days. As presented, the district's attendance has improved. It is important to remember that 2019-2020 was the year we redistricted and now serves as the baseline for our current structure. And also, the school was not in session after March the 13th. The 2020 graph shows that 52.11% of students missed 5 days or fewer, 37.14% missed 6 to 15 days, and 10.75% of students missed over 15 days. Since 2018, Clear Creek Elementary has made gradual improvements with our student attendance. The percent of students missing over 15 days has decreased from 18.18% to 7.57%. Since 2018, the attendance data for Clear Creek Middle shows a significant improvement in the percent of students missing 5 or fewer days. In 2018, 40.92% of students missed 5 or fewer, and in 2020, the percent increased to 54.66%. LJ Elementary has made gradual improvements with the percent of students missing over 15 days. Since 2018, the percent of students has decreased from 15.95% to 15.32% in 2019 and 10.14% in 2020. The attendance data for Gilmer High shows a significant improvement in the percent of students missing 5 or fewer days. In 2018, 44.79% of students missed 5 or fewer days, and in 2020, the percent increased to 57.5%. Since 2018, the percent of students missing over 15 days has improved at Mountain View Elementary. The percent of students missing over 15 days has decreased from 14.35% to 10.65%. I want to conclude tonight's presentation with one piece of additional data. Many people across the nation have questioned the impact COVID has had on student attendance. Presented is Gilmer's percent present for similar dates for the last 4 years. Looking at the October dates, you will notice that the percent present has dropped slightly from the previous year, but is higher than the October 2018 segment. Looking at the February dates, the percent present has dropped from the previous year.
You know, the Q code for quarantine counts the present, correct?
What was the question?
It doesn't.
It just
count
changed.
them out.
It doesn't count them as.
Correct. We just
It counts
changed
the
that.
quarantine. Otherwise, we would have lost major funding with FTE having 200 and something students quarantined.
Student attendance is very important. There is an abundance of research to support the push for students to be at school. However, student safety is our priority, and we are not encouraging students to come to school hostile.
They are counted present if they participate for that day. They have to log in and we have not done certain hours except in our high school. The high school has certain hours, right?
They have to be online active, so Ingenuity shows us if they're active while they're logged in or if they're idle. And so they have to show 3 hours of active time online a day to be counted as present.
So can I, if someone has a job during the day,
Can they get their 3 hours?
Yeah, so
in?
they can do, the 3 hours can happen anytime during the day. We don't actually check attendance until the next day. And so they can be on any time during the previous day. They have to be on for 3 hours. Or it's actually an hour and a half per, or it's 45 minutes per class they're taking. Because we have some students that aren't taking a full load online. And so it's 45 minutes per class that they have to be online.
so what's the percentage we have school
I have not pulled that number recently. I think we were down below 10.
I think we're below 10% now.
Okay, I mean, the last time I checked, it was like 12%.
We started the first year at about 22%. We had 800 students and it's dropped down now we're in the 300s. I think it's less than 10%.
The high school got an absolute influx of students after Christmas coming back.
Yeah, we're down below 100 students online right now.
Yeah. And as I get more information, I will share with you like our plans for next year. We're a little worried that the state's going to cut the funding for virtual. And you still have to pay for the software, you still have to pay for staff to monitor it. So that may impact what our plans are for virtual for the upcoming year, especially with such a small number participating.
Say something in the paper about this week.
Yes, we have lost enrollment. Our enrollment's gone down. Every district in the state of Georgia has lost enrollment. And so we calculated the number of students missing. It's not an exact figure, but we have not gotten our allocation yet. But based on FTE and the number of students that we're missing, we're thinking it's probably gonna be close to 300,000 in state funding, because last year we hung out at about 4,200 students. I mean, give or take 10 or 15 on any given day. This year, I don't remember what it was today, it was like 4,039. So we've lost over 150 students in the last year. And so we initially were very concerned because I thought, I bet people are just not sending their kids to school, like that they're sitting at home, not here, not enrolling somewhere else. But as soon as all the counties around us started and they claimed students, so we knew that truly our number was our number, we looked at every student to make sure that they transferred somewhere. Either their parents officially enrolled them in a homeschool program, a private school. Some people in the community said to me, oh, I bet they all went to the Christian school. We had like 14 students go to the Christian school out of that number. But a lot of the students have just moved, and we're not seeing the enrollment any given day in the last, ever since we moved central enrollment to this office. Anytime, any day you came in here, there would be people sitting in these chairs or over here at Layla's office, and they're just not moving. They're not coming in. So our county's growing, real estate is going gangbusters, but it's not families with children. It's retired. I think that's my philosophy, coming for the 65 and older exemption.
As the numbers keep going down, we'll possibly be back to the traditional
state funding for virtual. If they cut our funding and we have such a small number, it would probably be to our advantage to not offer it or only offer it. You know, we were already offering a virtual option at the high school, and before COVID hit, we talked about moving that virtual option down to the middle school as well, because we have students that have some emotional issues that tend to start middle school, high school, some social anxiety, that virtual may be the right option for them. So we would probably only keep it maybe at that level and encourage the parents that wanted to keep their children home to either one, homeschool, or two, do Georgia virtual school. But I don't know that we could continue to fund if, and we still don't have an answer for that yet, how the state's gonna work with us. I think some things with COVID, we just have to roll with the punches. I think that's one of them. Okay, our next area of the strategic plan is high-performing culture and workforce. Oh, wait a minute. We added to the parent community engagement the word that we got on wrestling late today. So I asked Ms. Foley if she could share with you a phone conversation that she had with Dr. Robin Hines, who is the Executive Director of Georgia High School Association.
Thank you for letting me share this update with you guys. As most of you know, last week we were notified that North Hall, who won the state duels championship a few weeks ago, that they had wrestled an ineligible wrestler and that therefore forfeited their title as state champion for duels. So we had made the assumption, or had hoped, that with them forfeiting the title, that would mean that Gilmer High School was now state champions for duels for Region 3A. That is not the case. And we had planned to appeal that decision that came down last Thursday from GHSA, that the title would be taken from North Hall and that simply the title would be vacated for this year. So we wanted to appeal that. When I came in this morning, I met with Mr. Johnson, and our intent was to email Dr. Hines our intent to appeal at the April Executive Committee meeting down in Thomaston. What I was notified of this morning was that we are not going to be eligible to appeal because the ruling actually didn't have anything to do with Gilmer High School. It was a ruling against North Hall, but that did not have anything to do with us, so we're not eligible to appeal. And so I wanted to appeal that appeal. And so they contacted their attorneys, GHSA contacted their attorneys this morning just to make sure that we did not have, we're not going to be eligible to appeal. The attorneys got back to us and said, you're not eligible to appeal based on the ruling. And so I reached out to Dr. Hines. He called me back this afternoon, and what I just said, I need your help. I need you to explain this to me so that I can explain it to our community why we are not now the state champions. He said it's based on ruling 2.63, which is on page 30 of the GHSA Constitution. Letter G, which states a team shall forfeit any team standing or points toward team honors when an ineligible student participates in a contest. And so simply the rule states that North Hall is penalized by losing their state championship status, but the rule does not state that any team would then get to move forward and be eligible for that opportunity to be the state champion. He cited two previous precedents where this had happened. I believe it was 2012, there was a soccer team that finished in second place. After the game was played, it was found out that a player had played in the game that was ineligible, so they simply vacated that second place finish for that school. And then in 1987, there was a basketball game where a team played an ineligible player, and they also vacated the championship at that time, and so it's just left as a vacant spot. No other team actually moves into that position. So we are very, very disappointed that we don't even get to really appeal that. I think we had some things that we wanted to get clarified at least, but the decision has been made by GHSA and we are not, the number one didn't actually have anything to do with Gilmer High School or not being able to appeal. But as Coach Kovac said earlier, we do hold the highest award given this year for state 3A rules. So our kids have definitely worked hard and we're proud of them, and we are the only school with the highest trophy sitting in their trophy case right now. So we'll take it.
Somehow that more power, they got power taken away, they have the right to do it.
They could appeal, yes, yeah, because it was directly.
They were sanctioned.
Right,
We weren't.
yeah.
What was the total post?
My understanding from the news article that I read was they lost the state championship, so they have to return their state champion trophy, and they were fined $500 by GHSA.
What about next year? Are they still, are they going to be on probation next year?
I did not read it.
They self-reported,
Yes,
so they're not probably penalized as much because they self-reported. They also lost the 24 traditional points that wrestler had obtained advancing through the rounds, which cost them a traditional championship as well.
So where did they come in? Did they win?
They finished third, just ahead of
no, they
us.
finished third. So this was reported Thursday evening of the traditional tournament.
Wednesday
Oh,
evening, when they
Wednesday.
discovered
So
everything.
we finished fourth,
Yeah, yes, sir.
and they finished third, and still cheaters, and still did again.
No, doesn't sit well, does it?
I mean, what about, did that wrestler, did he pick one of our kids in the early rounds?
Yes.
He did.
He did.
Yes.
In one of the earlier rounds, he did, which prevented him from potentially advancing to the championship. And nothing is done of that, unfortunately.
So, see, if he had been wrestling, we're gonna get right with go.
Yes.
That's just don't sound right to me.
No, I don't think any of us are in agreement that this has been done right by our kids.
I think other districts are thinking the same thing. I got a couple of calls from superintendents in the surrounding area that called me and said, y'all need to fight this is wrong, you know. I mean, it's not just us that recognizes that this is it feels very unfair.
Did they, when did they find out?
So it was Wednesday evening, the athletic director for North Hall was looking at points and looking at who was wrestling who and came across the name of one of their wrestlers who he did not remember putting on the roster that was submitted to GHSA. And so he went back and double checked that the child's name was not on the roster. Then he went to check the child's eligibility as far as grades and was he actually eligible to be wrestling. He was not, and he immediately called GHSA and said, we've made a mistake. We have somebody wrestling who is not eligible to wrestle. And so it was at that point, at the tournament, they took away all of the points that he had won for that tournament. I believe it was 24 points.
24 points.
They took 24 points away from North Hall at that point. Which is per the same ruling says, in sports where individual titles may be won, like cross-country, literary, riflery, swimming, traditional wrestling, gymnastics, golf, and track, eligible individuals will keep their placements and opportunities to advance towards individual honors, even if a teammate participated while ineligible. So it let everybody that was the traditional people, but he lost all of his.
But it should have took away them, I mean, able to place in the team, period. Because now what I'm saying is, you know, the other wrestlers, what one, they shouldn't get their title, they will stay or second state. They shouldn't get theirs taken away from them. But it seems like, since if the points comes in as a team again, that they, after they found out that they should get disqualified as a team, you know, in that other team. Everybody's in agreement.
We're all in agreement. I don't think there's a person in this room that doesn't agree.
So if we're gonna if we appeal it before they assemble, we got paid $5,000-6,000.
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
But in
So,
my years
or they
of
just want us,
education.
can we appeal it and pay for it? Get call in session?
No, my understanding from Dr. Hines today was we cannot appeal this at all, because it didn't,
It was not
it was
sanctioned
not,
against
it
us.
was not sanctioned against us, it's a North Hall sanction to forfeit, or in this case, forfeit and vacate are being used in the same.
Would that one traditional state, if they have to call it when they did, why didn't they?
I believe they were.
They would have, yeah.
They would have,
The top four places were very
What's the
close.
difference? They call, I mean, why they just go ahead and award them the state championship 2 times? Then they take the title, I mean, that's supposed to be. I'm sorry.
Thank you for explaining. I knew that you had had that conversation with him, and I didn't want to mess that up.
Sure.
Okay, next is high-performing culture and workforce. And the first item there is personnel, which is our general monthly personnel that we'll discuss in executive session. And then the next is the annual school personnel renewals. Last month, you reviewed and approved district-level staff and principals for renewal. Since then, we've surveyed all staff in the district to determine who wishes to return for the upcoming school year 22. And the principals and directors have made recommendations for staff for their buildings and departments for the upcoming year. One of those was missing out of the packets, and Ms. Plumley's handing that out now. One of the schools got left out. So on Thursday, I'll recommend the staff for renewal for the upcoming year. That does not mean that if someone was left off at this point, there are various reasons for someone to be left off at this point. There could be a certification issue, there could be a job performance issue. We don't demand that the principals recommend everybody right now. If they've got a staff member that they're considering, they leave them off maybe at this time, but then they may add them back later to your general personnel. All right, the next item on the agenda is the, oh my God, here so I can actually see what you guys are seeing and not have to turn around as I talk. The next item on our agenda is the Leader Keys Effectiveness System. Beginning in 2012, the state of Georgia, as part of the Race to the Top initiative, started a new way to evaluate staff. There's 2 components. One is the Leader Keys Effectiveness System, and that is for our building level leaders, principals and assistant principals. And then there's the Teacher Keys Effectiveness System for teachers. Tonight, I'm just going to share with you about Leader Keys because there were some questions last month about how our leaders are evaluated. And the overarching goal for Leader Keys is to support the continuous growth and development of school leaders by giving meaningful feedback, learning opportunities, and flexibility to innovate. All right, which button do I push on
I
this?
think it's the one on the right.
This one? Should I make it work just like that?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I had not had that in my hand before. Okay, so I just want to talk about the process, and this is actually smaller than I was thinking. The beginning of the process, the leader completes an orientation, self-evaluation, and self-assessment, and they begin the familiarization with the Leader Keys process. We do that every single year. Then we have a pre-evaluation conference. I evaluate the principals evaluate their assistant principals. And we actually have modified the process because the state mandates this for principals and assistant principals, but it kind of leaves the district office out. So we have created, using the same standards, a process for our district office leadership as well. Mid-year is what we have coming up right now. And we are not mandated to do it this way, but I feel like it's more effective to do it as a team. It's more effective to all sit down around the table with the leaders of the district. For example, Ms. Cagle, who is our assistant superintendent who handles HR, she is in those mid-year conferences. Ms. Mitchell is our chief academic officer. She does a lot of our curriculum and goes to our professional learning community. She sits in on that. And then Lindy Patterson is our director of state and federal programs. So she heads up a lot of our school improvement efforts as well. She will be in there. And I think this year, Ms. Chastain, you will be in there as well as our director of student services. So we all sit down and we really dig into the data. So the map data that Ms. Mitchell spoke to you about, we look at that all the way down to the classroom level. Our principals know their staff. They know where the strengths and weaknesses are because they've already looked at the map data, but we discuss it as a group. And we actually drill down to, there's a grade level that may not be performing, or there's one that's performing very highly. What is one group doing right, the other one could learn from. And then we drill down to the individual teacher. If there's a problem with achievement in a certain classroom that we can't attribute to, for example, 30% of our population are non-native English speakers. So if we see that that group is not performing, we kind of know why, but we drill down to that level at the mid-year conference. And we discuss the progress toward the professional learning goal. Each of the administrators pick a professional learning goal that's for them, not for their school, but what did they need to focus on for their professional learning. We discuss the progress towards that at that mid-year conference. And then the last item is the summative conference at the end. So these are the components of the Leader Keys Effectiveness System. The leader assessment on the 8 performance standards, and I'll share those 8 performance standards with you, comprise 30% of the Leader Keys Effectiveness System. And we'll go very quickly through those 8 standards. For teachers, there are 10 standards. For leaders, there are 8. Instructional leadership, school climate, planning and assessment, organizational management, human resources and leadership has 2. Human resources management, teacher and staff evaluation, professionalism and communication, and then communication and community relations. Those are the 8 domains and standards for our leaders. Here is an example of standard 1, and you can see for instructional leadership, the leader fosters the success of all students by facilitating the development, communication, implementation, and evaluation of a shared vision of learning, teaching and learning that leads to school improvement. And you can see the different levels there. Level 4 is continually. When we were trained starting back in 2012, we were told you very rarely have somebody performing at a level 4, especially on all 8 standards. Generally, you want level 3 consistently, that the leader consistently does those things. And all this is kind of common with the teacher keys as well. And that was an adjustment because the evaluation instrument prior to this was literally just a leader would come in a teacher's room, or I don't even know about what how the leaders were evaluated. I think it was just up to like the superintendent before this was mandated. But everybody got excellent on everything. So when we first implemented this, I was the director of that part in my previous district, and let me just tell you, there was lots of tears because everyone was used to being exemplary, and to say that you were a level 3 and not the top was hard for people to swallow. But I think we're all pretty used to that piece of it now. So, oh goodness. Okay, so for instructional leadership, is building the vision, shares the leadership, and leads the learning community. All of our leadership members at this point have been working with professional learning communities in their schools for several years now. That was one of our drives a couple of years ago, was getting everyone trained on professional learning communities. Those tend to be better where there are multiple people teaching the same subject and can compare. It's more of a challenge when you get to the high school level, but our leaders are expected to lead their schools through the professional learning communities. And they split that up. Like at the high school level, I think each Ms. Foley and then each of the assistant principals takes a content area to make that happen. Our academic coaches at the lower grades tend to take a larger role in that piece of it. Next, we have school climate. So we grade our leaders on the school climate, that they foster a positive climate, model high expectations, and practice respect. Planning and assessment, how they use data, monitors curriculum and instruction, and monitors assessments. If you were to sit in on our mid-year conferences, you would see this in action. Our leaders in our district are very well versed in the data of their schools and can tell you down to the teacher level how assessment is looking and where the strengths and weaknesses are. The next area is organizational management. Ensures safety, smooth daily operations, maintains facilities, secures and uses resources. I think we have improved in that area a lot over the last couple of years with some of our safety walkthroughs that we do quarterly. And really taking a focus on maintaining our facilities. Human resources management, that's pretty self-explanatory. How our leaders evaluate their teachers. You know, if you've got an entire staff and you don't have anyone who has a 1 or a 2 for a needs improvement, you're probably not accurately evaluating. So that's a red flag. I think we had to move into that as well because of that prior mindset of everyone is exemplary. If we're going to help our teachers grow, our leaders have to be able to say, hey, this is a weakness. Look at your data. We need to work on this. So we expect our principals and assistant principals to use the data in their human resource management conversations. And then you've got teacher evaluations, that they understand the TEKS and the leaks process, and that they can tell us at that mid-year conference who they think is performing very highly, what teacher they need to focus on, or what teachers they need to focus on for professional learning and professional growth, because we want everyone performing at the highest level possible. Professionalism, upholding the ethical standards, investing in personal professional development, and community relations and communication. And this is one that has been quite the challenge this year for us with having to keep the parents out of the building. But I think we've had some people really shine in that area of coming up with new and alternative ways to engage their parents. The next component of leader keys makes up 40%, that's student growth. That is based solely on the Georgia milestones. There are, the last time I looked, only I think 60% of the teachers actually teach a tested grade or subject. So the student growth piece is based on the school as a whole. So, for example, you know, Mr. Flitter, when you taught band, your student growth was not based on whether your students grew in your class. It was based on whether they grew in those tested milestone subjects. So that has been an area of debate a little bit over the years. But the whole idea is that everyone works as a team to work towards school improvement and make sure that every child achieves, so that every member of that staff owns the student growth reports. School climate star rating, and let me say, student growth, we do not have it for 2020 because we did not do milestones in the spring. There is talk that we will not have student growth this year. because of so many students being quarantined and being out of school, and the inconsistency of virtual and face-to-face learning. So the state as a whole will not give us the student growth for this year. And then you have school climate star rating. That's only 10%. That's surveys that go to students at upper elementary school and middle and high school, and also to parents as well. We will not get that this year because that comes from the state and they're not doing it in the name of COVID. And then the last part is the additional, the combination of additional data. That's part of that CCRPI score. That piece will not be available for last year or this year. So the only piece that we have is the leader assessment on performance standards, which is those 8 standards that I discussed. But as a district, I feel like we go above and beyond on this. We don't do just what's required here, especially in those mid-year conferences, doing those as a team and really digging into the data. We're going above and beyond what the state requires while still conforming to the state mandates. Are there any questions with leader keys? Next, under operational effectiveness, we have our Clear Creek Elementary building update, which is moving right along. So if you'll just tune into the video. It's been mudded and it is moving right along. Every time I go, I'm amazed at how much they've gotten done since the last time. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the amended board training plan. Each year, districts are required to submit a local board training plan for individual board member training and whole board training requirements resulting from an assessment identifying areas for board governance improvement. Since we were required to submit in September, we had to submit it with the names of the previous board members, and then we have to resubmit an amended version once our new board members take office in January. And so the plan itself has not changed. It's simply the names on the plan that have changed. So new members are required to complete 15 hours of training in the first year, while veteran members are required to complete 9 hours. I think we will probably go beyond that this year. We have a goal to become a distinguished board, and so that will require, I think, 12 hours for everyone, but that should be easily attainable through participation in conferences and our whole board training that's coming up on March 10th. Okay, the next item is legislative delegate and alternate. Now's the time for each local board to propose changes to the current GSBA legislative positions if they wish to do so. Proposed changes can be amendments to current positions, deleting positions, or adding new ones. Every board member receives an email with those directly from GSBA. The important thing for us to look at tonight is nominating a legislative delegate and an alternate. Those two people will need to attend, given that it's in person, the GSBA conference in June. Both are allowed to go to the delegate assembly, but if the primary is there, they're the ones that represents the board and the positions. So once we nominate a delegate and an alternate, then that person can work with the board to present those positions and see if there's any feedback from board members who would like to see those positions change. So on Thursday, I will ask you guys to nominate a delegate and an alternate for the GSBA legislative positions. We nominated, but they didn't hold the conference. Oh, yes. Yeah, I think Jim Farmer has volunteered to do that every year. He really enjoyed doing that. Were you the alternate, Doug? Okay. Yeah. So we will do that nomination on Thursday. The next item is policies for first reading. These policies are part of our consistent revision process. They'll be posted on the Gilmer Schools website for public review and comment before a second reading at our work session next month. Subject to feedback and public deliberations, these will be voted on at a regular session next month, and that's policy BCBK, executive sessions, policy BD, policy development, policy BDR1, policy development. And then we've got policies for second reading. The first one is policy GBC, professional personnel recruitment. GSBA legal recommended a change of one word. They recommended that we take out the word lateral in that policy. So that's all that's been recommended with that one. Policy IDE3, competitive interscholastic activities, grades 6 through 12. I understand there's some interest from the board in amending this policy, but I did pull the policy and pull the GSBA white book that influences that policy.
Well, I know last year, Dr. Downs, there was a little bit of confusion with some of the 8th grade band marchers that I have used each of my 9 years. And I just, I'd like to, I don't know, Mr. Weaver or Ms. Kinsey have been in touch with you or the high school principals or
Neither have been in contact with me about it. The policy, the current policy reads that a student wishing to participate in an interscholastic competitive activity must be enrolled full-time in the school that sponsors the competitive activity. Dual enrollment students are included in the enrolled full-time group to be eligible to compete. So if they're in middle school for competitive sports, they would not be enrolled in that school full-time. They'd not be enrolled in a high school. The Georgia High School Association says in the white book in 1.21 be eligible to participate in or try out for a sport or activity, a student must be enrolled full-time in grades 9 through 12 inclusive at the school seeking eligibility for that student. I think the confusion is that GHSA does not govern band. So it would be against GHSA for any student that's not enrolled 9-12 to participate in a competitive activity that is governed by GHSA. Band would not fall under that as far as GHSA goes. GHSA doesn't govern band. So that would mean that the policy would maybe add the words GHSA that would allow band. What are your thoughts, Mr. Johnson?
I have a lot of thought on this. Even when it comes to athletics, which we mirror one another at the middle school, and what we offer our kids, high school has their opportunities, middle school has their opportunities. I think we need to kind of go down the same path when it comes to our fine arts like band. It's hard for us to track the academic progress of the kids that are at the middle school when they come up to the high school, as well as monitoring their behavior and their attendance to support that opportunity. A recommendation that I would have would be to start like a middle school pep band or marching band that would be, instrumental for the band director out there to start, to run, and then our band director to support that. Just like Holly supports David right now with what we do at the high school. It's not a conversation that we've had at all, but that would certainly provide more opportunity for more kids at the middle school level as well. Instead of just, I don't know how many have typically come up, Mr. Pfluger.
I used anywhere from 1 kid to 12 kids.
So we could grow that out there, and then that would be pretty cool. Football games, give them a few more opportunities to showcase their skills, pump up the crowd, pretty neat halftime performance perhaps, and then it prepares them even more for what they can expect when they get to high school.
So the challenge is that behavior and like in the campus student information.
Well, just like we're monitoring everything that our athletes do. I mean, I can see everything for 9 through 12, no problem. Willie can see everything for his kids, so that we can make sure that they're meeting every standard that we expect from them in order to participate in extracurriculars. So it's something that, I like to be able to monitor our kids. And Willie does a great job at the middle school as well. His body can.
If we did, we would have been in violation of GHSA. I know that since I've been here, we have had multiple requests from multiple sports, especially it seems to be softball, girls softball at the middle school. The parents, or multiple parents have come to me over the years and said, my 8th grader is better than a lot of your high school players and they need to be on that team and you need to let them play. And I've been able to cite that policy and say, they have to be enrolled in that school and, or we'd be in violation of GHSA. So.
And one time, you let 8th grade, when you didn't have a baseball team in middle school, let 8th grade came up and play on the same.
I believe there used to be in the white book that was, if the school did not have a program, it was okay for the student to play up. But that's not even in the white book anymore. Now it says in order to be eligible, they have to be enrolled in the school that they're competing at.
I remember reading that piece several years ago in relation to a softball player. It was when Mr. Burrell was athletic director, and I remember reading that. It had to be like after the season was over for that school, and as long as they were an 8th grader, they could come up after the middle school season had completely ended.
And they
Or
couldn't
if
see
there was
that
no
number of
activity.
JV contests either.
Yeah,
That's the other
it couldn't be
stipulation.
varsity, right? It had to be
Right.
JV.
It had to be JV.
Yeah. But obviously, GHSA has.
And the exceptions too, of course, are that the 8th grade students can try out or work with the spring team. That's another thing.
Because they're upcoming.
But they're upcoming already.
Yeah. If it is the wishes of the board to change the policy, I guess it would be the second, if you look at the the policy, the number 2, a student wishing to participate in interscholastic activities, you could add governed by GHSA, and then that would allow, if that's the spirit of the change that you're wanting to make, then you would need to add that piece about GHSA governed. Then you would open up band, chorus. What else is not? FFA, okay. I'm trying to think what else. Cheer is under GHSA. We got some club sports that are not under GHSA. I don't like it. So I guess we'll vote on Thursday whether to amend that policy to, like, work with Mr. Fluger on the recommended word.
I just used it for, I had a lot of kids that would take private lessons, they were more advanced. It was my gifted band kids' way to achieve at the highest level. They weren't taking a spot of a high school band kid.
Right.
It was just a chance for them to be, you know, from what I consider my gifted kids to have that opportunity. And there's just not a lot you can do with 5 gifted kids, you know, I mean, they have their district honor bands and all state, their individual things, but there's not a real chance to do anything like that with that small group at the middle school level, because so many of them are either below the level or right at the level of playing, so they're all not ready to launch at that age. You know, and I just know there was confusion last year. And the way it's explained to me is because it said competitive activity, I relayed that message to the new band director. He continued on using the 8th grade marchers, you know, as needed. And there was just confusion at the end of the season.
Well, it sounds like there was confusion due to the GHSA changes too. So, and we can talk about this before Thursday, the proposed change. So would you want to change it specifically and add the words only band, like, you could keep a student wishing to participate in interscholastic competitive activity governed by GHSA must be enrolled. Or would you put any competitive activities governed by GHSA must be enrolled full-time in the school that sponsors the competitive activity, and then put a note out to the side, band is not, or if you added that GHSA piece, it would solve it for band, but it would open up the door for other activities as well.
I don't know, I mean, I like the idea, like Mr. Watkins said, before we had a middle school baseball team, some of those kids would be able to play up to the high school level or the JV level.
Yeah.
You know, do we still have a middle school golf team? Do we still have a?
The GHSA governs all those, and
Right.
according to the GHSA white book, we would be in violation. So every team that we allow someone to play up that is governed by GHSA, we would be in danger of losing, just like the wrestling thing in North Hall. We
So
would be playing ineligible players.
Even though we may not have a team at the middle school.
Even though we may not have GHSA into that policy, governed by GHSA, that would allow that. But it doesn't solve the challenges, the discipline challenges, and the concerns expressed by us. To table it to the next month. Okay, that's fine. So on Thursday, I will not be recommending any changes to that policy. That one will simply be left off the agenda for this Thursday. It will be added back on the work session for next month. Okay. The next one is policy IDFC, community coaches. The community coach policy has multiple recommended changes from both GSBA legal counsel as well as feedback from our Gilmer High School athletic director, Mr. Johnson, to provide both clarity as well as ensure that it is compliant with GHSA. That policy has been one that has been a challenge for us from the day it came in. It is a policy that has helped us protect our students, but it does need clarity. All of the recommended changes should be in your packets for you to look at. It simply clarifies some things. The one thing that was added a couple of years ago that GSBA recommended taking out was it set a monetary limit to the amount a community coach could be paid. GSBA recommended removing that amount. That's the only piece that has been controversial in the past. But the other pieces of it are simply to add clarity to make sure that it's easy to understand and easy to follow.
Well, now it mimics our approval process for what documents are needed in order before it actually is submitted to you, so that it's very clear, because it was missing some pieces.
And prior to this policy, this one was enacted in, I think, 2016 initially. There was not a process for community coaches. So we had at least one incident in 2015 where someone that was potentially a predator was helping coach one of the sports at the middle school because the coach liked him and didn't know the background and said, hey, come help me coach. And so the person was helping them. And so one of our previous board members felt like it was very important that we had a secure process for community coaches to have background checks, be approved by the coach, the athletic director, the principal, and the board. And we have had some challenges with that and have all the knowledge of the sport, passing those GHSA things, and that's the
Those
thing
who
that
don't
applies
follow
to that.
GHSA.
They don't.
And we had a president here, and I said, I was a coach for the group. I made the board, I went to a background check. My first thing, Coach Barnes had asked me to coach. He asked me to help out because of us. We put two little schools back together and we coached me and him. They out there, man. So I went out there, I made the board. I went off the board, I made the board do the background, I did a background check. I had to come in front of the board, the board had to approve me, and the coach had to.
And you were an anomaly, because that was not happening
And
other
we done
places.
that, and we done that specifically to set a standard for a volunteer coach.
But because it wasn't board policy, there were other sports and other coaches that were not as cognizant of those issues as Coach Barnes and you. And so we had people helping with all kinds of activities with no approval from the board, no background check, and no completion of the GHSA rules. So I think it is important to keep that policy. I just think it needs clarity. And Mr. Johnson, you did a lot of work to provide clarity where the weak spots were.
And the one thing that we added at the bottom, you'll notice the community coach is somebody that's not a certified staff member or a former retired teacher now. So just put that little disclosure at the bottom.
Yes.
Because they're a group of their own, the community coaches
Yeah.
are. And they can only be assistant coaches as well.
Yeah, community coaches can only be assistants, but if you had somebody that was a winning coach for multiple years and they wanted to come back and they're retired, they're certified, they would not follow the community coach policy with this recommended change. And that's consistent with GHSA as well. That was part of it within the white coat.
That's in section 2.51.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson's gonna know the GHSA white coat by heart.
After this week, yes.
Yes. So are we okay to keep that one on anything you want to change, we can change before Thursday, but, okay. The next item is one that we added, and that's, the calendar. As part of our charter, agreement with the State Charter Commission, our school governance teams have to have input in the school calendar. For the last several years, each school has worked with their SGT to submit a calendar and then put it out for vote. So at this point, we've given it to the SGTs for them to suggest calendars for vote. Some principals have already worked with their SGTs. it came to my attention today that, that the board would like to discuss the calendar tonight and give some additional parameters and guidelines to the SGTs.
My opinion is, last year, teachers started back in July. And, we're not Cherokee County, Gilmer County. I personally like the Murray County calendar, that ain't gonna happen. I feel like as a board, we need to set the parameters, how early we can start back and how late we finish. I personally say that nobody should be going back to school in July, period. And we've got, post-planning is in by May.
Post-planning has traditionally gone into June. The last couple of years, our graduation has followed, we try to do it on Friday, and it's been the 23rd. I think this year it actually falls on like June 27th. I'm sorry, May 23rd, 24th. I think this year it falls on like May 27th. May 28th. I knew it was almost a week later this year than it's been the last several years.
I agree, I don't like the idea of teachers starting in July. And certainly don't like it. It just backs everything else up, all the sports, all that extracurricular activities have to, back up into the middle of July. And you're getting closer to July 4th, the way, the direction we're headed. And, I've done a little bit of research on different calendars just to see what folks' calendars look like. And, I thought every school in the state had to go 180 days.
I think the only one not going 180 is Murray. And they've been at 160 for a long time. I don't know, maybe another one. Below Atlanta. I don't know.
I can't remember the name. We're going to play that.
But Murray County's achievement has gone
And
down.
I'm certainly focused on student achievement, and, I looked at the top 3 schools that, I guess, Georgia Department of Education has recognized as the top 3 schools in the state, and their calendars look a little different than ours. And if I counted correctly, a couple of them went 180 days, and 1 or 2 of them went less, so I was just wondering.
This year, don't look at the ones from this year.
Are they, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go back and
Most
look.
places have theirs approved for next year, and the year
Yeah,
after,
yeah.
they're doing it in 2 years.
Yeah, I know like Cherokee does 3 years out.
But is there a way that those schools that are doing less than 180 days, are they being credited based on their seat time?
Yeah, they're extending their day. In talking to Murray County and their curriculum department since I've been here, because every year this has come up because Murray County does 160 days for students. The state, back prior to charter and strategic waiver movement, everybody had to go 180 for students, 190 for teachers. Murray County, to save money, back in 2009, launched their 160-day calendar, and they extended their school day by, I forget how many minutes. It's less than an hour, but it's by about an hour a day, something like that. And they have, their leaders have wanted to go back to the 180 days because of it making the school year longer. Students' attention span, as you know, is only so long. So by extending the day, you're probably not getting as much bang for your buck, but you're saving money on the backs of your custodial, your bus driver, your lunchroom, your hourly staff. So those staff are not getting as much money because they're working less hours and less days. Your students are going to school longer during the day to get in the minutes, but is it effective time? So they wanted to change it, but because people have gotten used to going less time, I mean, think about it. If a teacher can work 160 days with kids instead of 180, their life just got a lot easier by about a month. So more time at home, more vacation time, that sort of thing. So they've not been able to change that calendar back to the full time since then. But we could do that because we're charter. So when you're charter, you waive all those state regulations. So, and we did this year. We reduced our student days by 5 or 6. 5 days to give our teachers more planning time to prep for the virtual academy. And then so our students this year are shorted by 5 days. We took advantage of that flexibility this year. I would be very cautious of going down the path of Murray County and 160.
He used to tell me when you start like students, August 12th, you'll get a whole week off of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you can start August 12th and get in your full fall semester with a week off at Thanksgiving, but there is no fall break, and the only other break would be Labor Day. You can start August 17th, have Labor Day off, and have 2 days off at Thanksgiving, but the students and the teachers do not get any breaks except for Labor Day and 2 days at Thanksgiving. You start on the 17th. If you start on the 12th, you're basically just doing away with fall break.
Well, as this sits right now, we're talking about 7 weeks for the summer break, right? According to the calendar that's been published.
The calendar that we have not published a calendar for this year, for the upcoming year. Oh, okay, yes, if you started on August 12th, you're saying 7 weeks,
No,
or?
it's not 7 weeks, we're August 12th.
We haven't published an official calendar of any sort for the upcoming year.
I just know last year, we picked some paper about school. I feel like you're at school. I will vote against anything that starts in July.
Do we have any feedback from the principals of adults and the teachers? Laura?
I met with my leadership team today in preparation to present to our STT. I have a meeting tomorrow. And the consensus from the teacher group was that they would go back in July gladly to have that break in September, October-ish, and that February break. I do think what they said is I plan things around those breaks. I do like to vacation in off times. I like to go on that fall break. I might take personal days to do that if it wasn't afforded to me, but I select to take it on the break that I do, which does help kids because they have that teacher in the classroom. It helps us because we have no subs to accommodate those situations. So I met with 15 people today, and not a single one of them had a slight hesitation about going back in July because of that time off. And the summers are slightly shorter, but we get a break in that October time and the ability to go skiing in February and all of those things that we
Let's talk
have.
about that, because only people this calendar's good for if you got a spouse that can take off week. Most people in Gilmer County, it's like 10% of Gilmer County teachers that can do this.
And I will share
And,
with that.
we're not going, I'm not going, I mean, it's nice to take 10 vacations a year, but most people in Gilmer County can't take 10 vacations. You're messing my vacation up, I start back in June. You like, you messed me going up on vacation.
I work all year long, Ron. I work all year long, so it's not messing up my vacation, but
And here at schools,
it keeps my
you get all these
teachers.
vacations year round.
Either way, unless you modify the calendar to the 160 or whatever, our teachers work 190 days. We work, year round, the administrators do. And, that's part of our contract.
I sent the calendar proposal package to teachers before we went on break. I asked my department chairs to give me feedback before we left on February 12th, because I had Lori was saying that their children talked about the breaks coming up and how much they needed that break. And maybe it's part of the COVID and all of the extra stress that we're under this year, but their children have expressed, it was at that point, they were like, oh, thank goodness we have a week off. I talked with them about the difference between the long weekend breaks and the week-long breaks, and every single one of them said it's easier for us to take the week off than it is to try and find childcare for a day here, a day there, a long weekend. But they're, like this last break we had was tied around President's Day, and so that was a day that most people were already off anyway. And the teachers, the feedback I got from the teachers was the same. They all really liked this calendar we had this year.
Stephanie, Charles, have y'all had any conversations?
Yes, I have just started the conversation, really today, as far as the calendar for next year. And of course, I haven't gotten to every single person, but the feedback on this calendar, I guess this is my 8th year as principal, has been the best feedback that I've ever received from a calendar. Because we go and, X amount of days or weeks, no half days or very few, and no Friday, Monday. We go X number of weeks, week off. X number of weeks, week off. There's consistency and there is a schedule. And people, I'm a firm believer, students and adults need a schedule. And it's not choppy and it allows you to plan. But
My feedback's been very consistent. We have preliminary meeting with leadership prior to the winter break, and we actually have leadership tomorrow, SGT on Wednesday. And both SGT last month and leadership have both said, if we have any input at all, now this was last month, we would love to have a similar calendar for next year. So we will be putting that together tomorrow and on Wednesday, but I foresee them really wanting something very similar. They used the word choppy, leadership did, about the Friday, Mondays, and when you're looking at specials and when you're looking at things that happen on Fridays, and you only have, say, art on Fridays, then when you're looking at the number of times, when you miss just a Friday, then that's how many times you would miss that particular, content each time. So they prefer not to have the choppy weeks, especially when it's messing up a Friday and a Monday, and taking away from 2 different weeks. So both parents and the biggest thing that we have had is, could we please have an early release day the day before Christmas break? And that has honestly been the only change that they would like to put into next year's calendar, and basically keep similar things that was on this year's calendar. That was the only feedback I received that they would like to change.
And they were so careful in counting the number of instructional days and trying to plan even professional learning days around that 9-week break. So thinking of maybe the middle school that has whole class changes oftentimes in that. So a lot of consideration from our staff on that calendar.
Okay, well, if the board wishes to set parameters, we do have to give the SGT's input. So if the board's going to set parameters of a mandate, it cannot start before, and I hear you saying before August 1st. That's doable. No teachers in school before August 1st. So you're not thinking of setting it as far up as like August 12th or something like that, where you reduce the.
No, I don't think it's almost too high.
What about you guys? Okay. Is there any more talk about reducing the number of calendar days, staff days, student days, like Joe Murray?
Not necessarily. I like Mr. Watkins' point. I think we need to do what is best for Gilmer County students. And, it just depends on what you look at. There's research that says that a week-long break in fall and winter is a great thing, and the research that says it's not a great thing for kids. So it just depends on what you look at and what's best for our kids. that's, you know,
Well, I think one thing that a benefit of doing it where the SGTs have the say or have some input is you're talking to your teacher leaders with the leadership teams. You've got parent input on the SGTs. And then it's been the last several years where one calendar won by a landslide. Like it has not been close. It's been, and I've reported the percentages. We did make a change last year because in previous years, people were voting more than once for the calendar. Last year, you had to do it using a link. You had to do it with a Gilmer Schools email. So students, and then we send it out to parents. So you could only vote using the email address that it went to. But I feel like that way you get input from the community rather than, I don't want to make the calendar. I don't, no interest whatsoever in it, other than I want to make sure that our students get the days that they need, because I feel like that it needs to be at the school level.
I know one middle school, third grade middle school student, asked him, do you go on the calendar? He says, we go on some days, and our teachers don't start on the board. You know?
We didn't do it at the school level. Like, we didn't have a day where we told them to vote.
Right.
That
So
was
that's the way I
completely.
look at that.
And I mean, you know, I think you're always gonna have people that try to game the system, no matter what, but if it had to be a specific email address, I mean, they only get one vote. So,
another thing, going back to the students, if you ask a child, hey, you want a break here, you want a break here? I don't know what child is gonna say, turn that opportunity down.
well, but it's the same number of days either way. But if it's the wishes of the board, if we're still gonna put it out for vote, like we have, the SGTs, because I don't know how you fairly do it, or one SGT's gonna get more input than the other. But, you know, if it's still, if that's the way we're still going to do it, then is it the wishes of the board to not give the students the opportunity to vote and only send it to parents and staff? Because we can do that, our email system really can limit those
I think
things.
it'd be a plus to allow the parents, teachers, and staff members to vote on it versus opening it up to students. That's
Okay.
just my personal opinion.
Okay.
I mean, as a staff member, I didn't get to make my hours when I went to work,
Right.
So, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Well, then we can eliminate the students from voting and only allow staff and parents.
But for the people,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just trying to get a feel, because the schools need to know when they go in to meet, like, you know, Ms. Pierce already said she's met with, yeah, hers is, Stephanie's is tomorrow. So,
Start August the first.
the only, will not start, just say it cannot start before August 1st. Let them make it, because they may come back and say August 12th. You know, you may get one that comes up that way depending on what the SGT looks like, or the, you know, the leadership team, so is that our only parameter? Are we gonna set an end date? It has to end by a certain date. I only look at first semester.
So most maybe only have one.
I do not personally, and, you know, some of you may disagree with me, but post-planning, by the time we hit that last week, our teachers are done. Like, I mean, one day of post-planning, in my opinion, is all you need, because our teachers pack up their rooms, and then you try to teach professional learning on the second day of post-planning, nobody is tuned in. They are thinking about the beach trip, they're thinking about going to the lake, they are tuned out. So post-planning to me is the least effective time for in-service. So we have tried these last couple of years to really front-load the pre-planning, which is what we did this year. We modified that calendar to give an additional 5 days because of the virtual, but we try to do 4 to 5 days of pre-planning, because if you don't, the teachers start coming in July, even if they're not scheduled to set their rooms up, because they want to make sure that their room is perfect, and and that they don't have to worry about it when we are trying to do the training and the planning and the papers and all that kind of stuff at pre-planning. So, post-planning, I have not counted days. Any of y'all that have already worked with your SGTs, does it work?
Well, it depends on like Thanksgiving break, if you're gonna do, you know, or a full week there, or if it's going to.
Or gonna have a winter
A
break?
winter break, it's gonna, you know,
So
depend on.
if you set it by the end of May, like by that May 31st date, you're probably going to eliminate the opportunity for any of them to suggest a winter break. You could probably, and I haven't counted it, safely say you can't start back before August 1st, and you can't end later than June 3rd. And I think you would probably be safe to give them the opportunity to make the calendar that they wish to make.
Is post-planning this year going to affect the opening of Clear Creek Elementary and advertising?
Post-planning should not, we're expecting to have to move over the summer. Like, we're not expecting to be able to use post-planning for that move. We may, if we're blessed with, you know, some really quick construction, we may be able to, but it's not scheduled to be done until the end of June. So we've eliminated really having our teachers. Now, we have in the past given flexibility to our principals to say that if they want to, like if when Stephanie is having her staff moving in, and Kelly, if they want to have their staff like exchange a day, as long as it's in the same fiscal year, like after July 1, we've allowed them to say they can work a day here and not have to make up if there's a snow day. We've done some, Carla's done that a couple of years. There was only one in-service day after Christmas, and because, I mean, even at the high school, that changes semester, they need two. She's allowed her teachers to come in and work when everybody else was closed, and then we work out that day, as long as it's in the same fiscal year.
And that was a topic of conversation at our leadership. Mr. Kluger was, you know, they are expecting this year, definitely Clear Creek Elementary School to be working in July, because we know the tentative plan is to be able to move in probably right after the 4th of July. And so that's kind of what they were thinking that last week of July. They were just planning on, you know, being there. And keeping in mind too, that anyone that's retiring, you know, when you're asking them to work post-planning in June, I don't think they can work any June dates. So, you know, having a post-planning day and asking them to work those days, I think it could mess up their retirement schedule.
It really depends. You could retire.
Retire.
Yeah, you could retire on June the 2nd. A lot of people are, because that's our last post-planning day, and it's fine. That's the date that you give to TRS. So, yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so principals can leave with the idea that their calendars don't need to start before August 1st and don't need to go beyond June 3rd. Is that doable to give them, your SGTs, the flexibility to recommend? Is that agreeable with the board? I know that we're not voting because it's a work session, but I feel like they've got these meetings and they need to know the wishes of the board.
Next year, we want to have it done early.
We can definitely have it, and we can start doing the calendar for the next year now. I mean, there are school systems that do it way out, or we could do it the first month of school and go ahead and have it done. We have,
Why can't we just let it live? You said church, because
they did 3 years out.
how's the board feel about it more than 1 year?
I think it'd be great. I think it would allow them to plan further ahead.
I think our community would appreciate it. I had tried to do it earlier, a couple of years ago, when Mr. Weaver was on the board, and that was coming on the board in January, and nobody wanted to do it before new board members came on. So that's why we've kind of pushed it the last couple of years back. But I mean, I think it would be great. I've been asked 3 times had one parent that's revocable, she wanted to plan fall break a month ago for this upcoming year. Wanted to know when it was coming.
No. Got caught up.
I've already expressed my opinion about the calendar, but, yeah, just one person.
And your opinion was just let us
Let
know
it go,
soon.
the process that we have. Because, I mean, that's day-to-day operations.
It ain't that thing. Anything comes in front of this board, we have to vote on it. It's not day-to-day operation. If we vote on it, it's board business. I got a yes vote or a no vote, and I have the right to vote no on something. If it don't come from the board, then it's day-to-day operation. But if it comes from the board, it's day-to-day, it's not day-to-day operation. I mean, need your lawyer in on that? That's the way I look at it. I mean, it's like, we're fixing to vote on personnel. You know, you recommend it, we vote on it. I can vote no. So we want to go to this calendar for a 2-year period? or
You
three?
can't just take the same calendar and do it. We can task the SGTs with developing 2 years worth of calendars, because SGT has that input. My recommendation right now, because we're pushing it so far into the year, would be let them get those calendars out. Let's get them voted on by the staff and parents, no students. Get it done in March, and then, because you'll need to vote on it in March for it to become official. So then, if we want to make one for the next year, let's go ahead and start that at the beginning of next year and do 2 years out when we have time. But right now, I feel like some people have already met with their SGT, some have a meeting tomorrow to try to do 2 years worth of calendars, because the days fall differently. August 1st may be on a Sunday this year and on a Monday or Saturday the next year. Does that work?
Yeah, it works.
All right, let's move on.
Can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Can we go, how, are you gonna give us a limit of how far we can go into December?
Christmas Eve falls on a Friday.
Yes. Because if I want to honor the wishes of my teachers and my families that I've already heard from, then we're gonna have to go into that week of Christmas.
I figured we would have to go to that Wednesday, the 22nd. And I only looked at first semester, I was counting when I knew this was gonna be a discussion. And, I looked at, because of the way Christmas falls on a Saturday,
Friday.
Christmas Eve's on a Friday. I think we're gonna have to go to that Wednesday.
You'll have to go into that. But I didn't want to spend the time putting
Right.
everything together to come back and have new parameters put in, because
Yeah.
that was too close to Christmas.
No earlier than August 1st, no parameters on Christmas, and by the first week in June.
But have your brother have more time off Christmas than we do Thanksgiving?
I don't care. I mean, I end up working it anyway. I mean, I do. It doesn't matter. I know that a lot of people say when you do the Thanksgiving where you do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you've got a 5-day break. If you had a Monday and Tuesday, you've got a 9-day break. So most of the families that I hear from want the full week at Thanksgiving, if they're gonna travel to see family out of state. And that's expensive travel time too.
Do that now.
What's that?
Go see Thanksgiving.
I have.
And see my mom, she drive her nursing.
I've been to California to see family since COVID started. Okay, so are we okay with those parameters? Okay. All right, now I'm completely misplaced on my notes. AED, and those are two East Plus purchases. Both of those have to do with the computer network out at the new school. I asked John Call, and he explained it this morning to me, and I still can't tell you what those exactly were, but those are the only two for reporting purposes. The next thing on the agenda, to me, is something extremely happy to report, because a lot of work went into it, and it really benefits our school, and that's the capital outlay reimbursement. We received some great news from the BOE Facilities Division this month. I have been submitting paperwork for over 3 months to try to get the records of a previous employee together to be able to file for reimbursement. And I was able to file from the beginning of the construction of Clear Creek Elementary through November, and I've worked since November to try to get it completed. I finally got it completed, and we got the word that we are receiving, and we received it today, I think, or it might have come in last week, but I was notified by Ms. Penland today. We got back $3.85 million, which is great because the cost of building has gone up exponentially since COVID happened and since we planned for this elementary school. And so every dollar that we get back from that reimbursement goes directly back into the East Plus. And as you know, our community asked for or approved the new Clear Creek Elementary School, and then a performing arts center to be built or started later with this East Plus. And then, you know, we have transportation, safety, and technology that can be purchased with it. So all of that money goes back into the East Plus, so that will help us to still be able to attain our goal of the Performing Arts Center, where I was really worried when I saw the price of the building going up. We've already started the elementary school, that we would be hurt. So I still have more to submit. So if we got back 3.85 from the groundbreaking in March until November, they will not reveal to you the formula that they use to give you that money, but they want a lot of paperwork to go with it. So now I know the process, I've got my process in place, so hopefully we will see another significant reimbursement. I just wish I knew what the formula was, but 3.85 is not something to frown upon.
That's a lot of paper for that.
You know, you can. You can. I wanted to throw a lot of paper out the window through that process because it was very frustrating, but we got the first payment. So I'll start the December, I already submitted December through February. I'm just going to keep, now that I've got it going, I can keep it going that way. The next item that I just wanted to bring up with the board and with those in attendance is the $1,000 one-time COVID payment for staff from the state. We received information the week before the break that the state would base funds allotted for this payment on the CPI report that was submitted in October. This means, and it will only go to school-based staff. It means that our district will receive funds for staff assigned to schools, but not transportation, maintenance, other district level staff. In my conversation with other superintendents from around the state, most indicate that they plan to use CARES funds to make sure that all staff in the district receive the payment. I have heard of a couple of districts, not too many, that are setting like a salary cap. If you make over a certain amount, you don't get it. But as I receive more information, and as Ms. Penland gets more information, I will share it with you through your weekly board news, which I send out on weeks that we do not have a board meeting. And then it will be up to the board if our board wishes to extend that to all district staff, or set a salary cap, or just stick with what the state will give us.
So
They haven't given us the allotment.
they're not necessarily gonna give us $1,000 for every single employee.
They're going to give us, according to them, they will look at our October CPI report, and they will determine how many people are school-based employees. And then they will give us $1,000 for each of those. Now, taxes have to be taken out after that, And I think it's like, the $1,000 payment comes out like $586 once everything's taken out of it.
The other, give them 1,000, then this way, but then they get half off that way.
Yeah, well, part of it goes into retirement, and then it's, Social Security, state, federal taxes. So it will be up to the board, if our board wishes to distribute it to everybody, or set salary limits, or. Yeah, we have, at last count, we had, I think, 527 employees. Whenever we have done these before, like when they did the austerity reductions and they gave us some back, we did it for everybody in the district. Because even if you set a salary cap, we have some teachers that the state's given us the money for, and they've told us you have to give it to the school-based staff. Well, we would have some teachers that would be over that salary cap because of their degrees and years of experience. Or if they're a coach, like it would eliminate pretty much everybody that coaches if you set the salary cap at, like, say, 70 or 80,000 because of the extended days and extended supplements. So my recommendation would be to give it to everybody, and because
But the state doesn't have a salary cap.
the state has no salary cap, they just said school-based. But when you look at our staff, just think about the bus drivers that drove those buses all through COVID. The parapros that rode, the parapros who did it because they're school-based. Our maintenance staff, cafeteria staff would get it because they are considered school-based. But it would not include maintenance or bus drivers. So we have 58 bus drivers, and maintenance 12, plus transportation employees. And we have, and there's 24 people here. Parapros are school-based, so they're in that state allocation. But what we found when we looked at stuff like this before is the cost of giving it to everybody is not as much as just as you would think, because most people are school-based. Yeah. I'll keep you updated as we hear more. They left out pre-K at first too, and the state went back and said, we're gonna add pre-K, but no, it's gonna delay us a month or two in giving the districts the allocation while we figure out how to allocate $1,000 per pre-K district. Okay, federal programs budget update. Oh, I do. I knew I. Yes. Oh, yes. Ready for you.
I'm going to take a few moments to share about each of the federal grants that Gilmer County Schools receives, review the application, and discuss how we use each of our grants. The first one is Title I Part A, promotes academic achievement by providing federal funds to school districts with high percentages of low-income families. Title I funds are allocated to schools based on a ranking system in which the school with the highest poverty receives the most funds. These percentages are based on the previous year's kindergarten through 8th grade FTE information for us, and that's because only our elementary and middle schools are Title I. And as presented on the screen, we saw an increase from our FY20 allocation by about $138,000. Gilmer uses Title I funds to pay the salary benefits for 10 class-size reduction teachers, 4 academic coaches, and the partial salary benefits for the director of federal programs and the district family engagement coordinator. We also use the funds to pay for stipends for our school, lab, and family engagement partners, licenses for software, and math, science, and literacy materials and supplies for students. Title I Part C is a federally funded program to support educational programs for our migrant children and youth. This year's allocation increased by $16,485 and is based on the 3-year formula grant. We used our Title I Part C funds for tutoring and instructional materials. And And currently we have 49 students in our night program. Title II, Part A is the focus of it is to increase student achievement and to improve effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school workers. And our FY20 allocation increased by $42,930. We use our Title II funds to pay for our instructional technologists, the salary and benefits for substitutes, so that teachers can attend professional learning, registration fees, tuition groups for our gift endorsement, and stipends for our new teacher orientation, visual teachers, and professional learning outside of their school year. And I want to mention something here about the instructional technologists. Back in the spring, we did a survey asking our teachers what their professional needs were, and we had 177 teachers reply to the survey. 147 respondents indicated they need advanced or introductory learning for instructional technology, and another 158 of the 177 requested professional learning or virtual learning. And so I think that that's a good point for our instructional technologists. The Title II Part A Advanced Placement Grant is designed for our AP Summer Institute. And districts may apply for this as a competitive grant every 2 years. And we did learn last week that we got $700. It's very specific on this. Title III, Part A, provides funding for our language instruction and education program for our English learners. And this allocation is based on the FTE formula, and it was increased from increased $6,237. What Dr. Johnson said at the beginning of about our enrollment video, most of these grants are based on FTE. We use our Title III funds to pay for an after-school program for our K-8, and we try to use it for our 9th grade previewing program, a lot of professional learning for our English learners, and I do want to point out here that we have 627 ELs, which is about 15% of our population. So the funding. So Title III Part A also provides funding for our immigrant students. And immigrant students are defined as children between the ages of 3 and 21 who were born outside the United States and have been enrolled in school less than 3 years. And that is no typo. So our allocation for FY21 is $51,935, which is about $49,000 more than we got. In the past, we've used this money to provide language games, picture dictionaries, vocabulary cards, and journals. This year, we're looking at some additional professional learning and maybe a little technology. We have 113 entrants. Title IV, Part A is a grant that's intended to improve the student achievement by providing well-rounded education and focusing on the emotional needs. This grant increased slightly over last year, and we've used this grant for STEM activities, stipends for our PBIS coaches, and Google certified educators, some conference fees, and PBIS signage for our buses in schools. Title IV Part A START grant is also a competitive grant, and its purpose is to assist rural school districts in their fine arts initiatives and to improve access to the arts. We have applied for this grant 3 years and have won it 3 years. And this year, it was a $10,000 grant awarded to Gilmer High's band program. And we were using the money to purchase a sound system, additional mixing microphones, a director keyboard, and sound and recording system. And the last one, for me, and the last federal grant, this Title V grant is a rural education initiative. And this grant has the flexibility that I can use this money on any, that follows the rules of any of the other grants. And we use this for technology licenses and instructional materials and supplies. The last grant is,
the 3 budgets that you see displayed here are for special education services and supports in the county. The funding is allocated based on the number of students that qualify for special education services and based on the areas of exceptionality for those students. It includes children 3 through 5 as well as K through 12. And as you can see at the top, a large majority of this goes to teacher and paraprofessional salaries to support students with special education services. And the remaining funds are used for a variety of needs, substitutes, professional learning, instructional materials such as adaptive curriculum, contracted services, and safety equipment for our students.
I don't know the total number, and you can take speech or the anything else. Do you know how many students we have receiving special education services?
Yes, last year, the number was 361, and currently we have 407 students in the county.
Wow, so
Divided by-
our
divided by-
population went down, but our special education population
And
significantly.
they come in every day. I hear about it a lot.
Every day, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, so we seem to always.
We got 92. Divided by 400.
Oh, gosh, we have more than 9 teachers. Oh, yeah, we probably have 9 teachers in the hospital.
Yes.
Oh, speech. So we have 4 speech. 4, 3.
And then teletherapy. And, yeah, a partial contracted service for teletherapy.
Okay, Ms. Penland, budget update. First, I want to note that the Department of Audits and Accounts conducted the audit exit conference on February 9th and issued an unmodified financial statement opinion, and no audit findings or management letter comments were made. That happens in almost no other districts in the state. Our financial practices are solid. The anticipated final release of the audits for late March. Ms. Penland had to leave today to go home sick. About 30 minutes before this meeting, she brought me her report, so bear with me on that. I had not looked at it in the last week while we were on break. Oh, nutrition. I have Ms. Waters' report, who is also out tonight for medical reasons. So the school nutrition report, we have significantly seen an increase in the school nutrition fund balance thanks to Ms. Waters. She had a good fund balance, retired, and we had another nutrition director who was not nearly as efficient, and the fund balance was depleted significantly. Ms. Waters has brought that up. Our previous month's net worth was $577,443.60. It came up this month by almost $6,000 to $583,281. Our fund balance compared to last year has come up $129,000. Her goal is to have at least 3 months operating costs for school nutrition, and if we have not reached that, we are right there. We are extremely close. So right now, our current month is $583,281. Last year, it was only $453,720. So our fund balance is up $129,000 over last year. And participation, it fluctuates month by month. February is one of our shorter months for participation. So now I'll move on to Ms. Penland's reports. First, the FY21 financial summary, December 2020. We have the total revenues coming in are $39,002,300. That was the budget. The actual is $25,263,802 so far. That's 64% of our revenue, 64.78% of our revenue. Total expenditures, we have budgeted for the entire year $41,575,000, and our FY21 actual at this point is $19,480,483. That's 46.86% of our total projected expenditures. Our fund balance as of 7/1 of 2020 was $17,377,000. That increases throughout the fall as property taxes are paid and we receive our allocations from the state, then that starts to dwindle back down. So at this point, we're still at a high of 23,160,489. And so we have a very healthy fund balance. Part of the confusion within the public is that that does deplete as we spend the tax dollars that we receive when property taxes are due in the fall. Okay, next we have the 2015 East Plus expenditures. Remember that East Plus is over at this point, and so we are just spending down what is left of it. We have, this month we have spent, or actually this is, February. As of February, we have spent $4,330. And that has all been technology projects, because we can continue to spend the 2015 East Plus as long as it is on the items that are listed on that referendum. Okay. So let's look at the 2020 East Plus. The only thing we are spending out of that one at this point is for Clear Creek Elementary, and I'm having trouble. One of my contacts is ripped, so I'm seeing with one eye at this point. But we have spent this month $14,000, looks like $966. Okay, that is different.
I never see the numbers that she goes by.
Yeah, well, it's different than what, that is different than what she handed me before she left. Basically, we have only spent, okay, that's our total. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the monthly is only 14,000. And when I saw that 14,000, when she brought this to me, I said, why is it so low? She said, we basically had 2 months worth last month, and the way this board meeting has fallen, it's a lower number. But our East Plus to date for Clear Creek Elementary, we have already spent $9,578,930. So difference in the monthly and the total. And then the last item that has to be board approved is the school activity accounts. And you have, well, I didn't go over part of the East Plus. Our 2020 East Plus receipts are far exceeding expectations. We have brought in historical amounts every month. For the calendar year 2020, we had, actually I think I should say 2021. No. Okay, because we only started collecting in the fall, 1.8 million total of East Plus revenue. That can't be right. Because we were still on the 15 until the fall, that's what it is. No joke, no. Okay, so let's go to the school activity accounts. We have to report these to the board. These are school level accounts. And right now, the totals, the year-to-date receipts, the ending balance is $493,268.08. That's the ending balance as of December 31st of 2020. That's the year-to-date receipts for the school activity accounts. One of the concerns that's normally expressed is that the high school has a much bigger school activity account than the elementary does because of all of the sports that engage and fundraising and all that comes with a high school, the middle school second, and then the elementaries are more limited in the fund balance and monies flowing through those school activity accounts. For the superintendent's announcements or comments, I just want to note that tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, our girls are hosting the first round of playoffs at Gilmer High School at 6 o'clock. And then our annual board retreat is scheduled for March 10th at the Larry Walker Center beginning at 8:30 a.m. For the required whole board training, the entire meeting is open to the public and media as required by Georgia Sunshine Laws. But please note that also our required first public budget hearing will take place at 4 o'clock on that day, and that has to be advertised separately. And we are complying with those requirements for that. So that will be an all-day affair on March 10th at the Larry Walker Center. And lastly, public participation is the final agenda item at the board work sessions. It'll be the intent of the board to allow input solely on agenda items from those in attendance. All presentations to the board are to be brief and are intended for the board to hear comments or concerns without taking action. All other time limits and topic restrictions remain in effect. Is there anyone here for public participation? Then I recommend a motion to enter executive session to discuss personnel, any pending litigation or real estate.
Have a motion.
Make a motion.
Second? Second. I'll vote for. I'll vote for.
Okay. No action will be taken